This is it, the Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra, the flagship of Samsung flagships. All the most high-end components the South Korean giant can pack into a phone, and the highest specifications anyone can possibly ask for in April 2020. But do these extreme specs come into play in the average person's daily life? Well, let's crack this beast open and find out. Taking the lid off the top, we can see the smartphone in all its glory, filling up the dimensions of the box's interior. But let's leave it here on the side for a moment. Taking out the compartment tucked away inside the lid, we find some instruction manuals and a SIM injection tool. It's pretty basic. In fact, the whole design of the box is pretty plain and simple, with a smooth, all-black design to match the colour of the phone. Underneath the phone, we find a 25-watt fast-charging brick, with a USB-C to USB-C cable, and also some pretty nice-looking wired earphones, stored inside this cute little package. On the subject of charging, just note that the S20 Ultra supports up to 45 watts via cable and 15 watts wirelessly. Give it to Apple and Samsung to not pack the max charging brick inside the box. How typical. Now, let's address the phone itself. Peeling off these satisfying stickers, we see the shiny glass finish to the S20 Ultra. Now that I see it in person, the large camera bump is indeed quite disconcerting. It seems that the edge of the bump is just over halfway across, which is kind of annoying if you stare at it for too long. It is also a shame that Samsung only released two colours for the Ultra, black and grey. One can only hope that they don't follow up on this mistake and remove the stunning and popular Aura Glow variant of the Note 20 Plus. Well, let's boot it up. The power button is once again on the left with the volume rocker, so bear that in mind if you're going to purchase any Samsung devices and are used to having the power button on the right. Noticeably, the phone is very hefty and chunky. The massive 6.9-inch screen can be quite difficult to reach across with just your thumb, and it weighs 220 grams, so just 6 grams lighter than the iPhone 11 Pro Max. That just shows how dense the stainless steel frame is on the iPhone. The Ultra screen is a solid 0.4 inches longer than the 11 Pro Max's, and yet the iPhone is still 226 grams. With screens, well, Samsung just does it best. The Ultra's display is stunning and vibrant, showing off the colour and depth of this default wallpaper. There is just a tiny pinprick of a punch hole now. The selfie camera on the Note 10 wasn't particularly obtrusive, but now it is barely noticeable when you are watching videos or playing games. The 16GB of RAM and Exynos 990 make the experience smooth and glitchless, although a lot of people would rather have the Snapdragon 865, which is just slightly faster than the Exynos. But really, what shows off the fluidity of the display is the 120Hz. I currently use the OnePlus 7 Pro, a 90Hz phone, so it isn't a huge upgrade for me, but for 60Hz phone users, this jump is massive. Yes, it is true that on a small phone screen, texting and watching videos on a 60Hz display isn't very different to a 120Hz one. But when it comes to gaming and scrolling, my goodness, the feeling is on another level. A good test of this is Geometry Dash. Try it yourself. If you get a 120Hz phone and already have a 60Hz one, first get used to playing on the 120Hz screen and then go to the 60Hz. You will not believe how discomforting and laggy the latter experience will seem. The downside you all have heard about is that the phone cannot run both 120Hz and Quad HD Plus at the same time in order to save battery life, which really bums me out, because 1080p just isn't good enough for a 2020 flagship. Luckily, rumour has it that Samsung is due to release an update in 2 months' time that will allow the S20 phones to run both, which is sure going to be fantastic, despite the battery draining. On that subject, the S20 Ultra has a huge 5000 mAh battery, but the 6.9-inch screen kind of kills it in shorter time than you might expect from such a large capacity. Now let's address the elephant in the room, the incredible 108 megapixel camera sensor. But is it so different from other ones? Photos taken by the main 12 megapixel camera is already up to standard. This is Samsung we're talking about, and honestly the only real difference between the 108 megapixel lens and the normal lens comes when you zoom in. There's way more detail in the picture on the right, quite obviously, but the average person isn't going to notice much. However, the zoom on this phone is quite extraordinary, and the 100 times space zoom is crazy good, bordering on creepy. The phone does this by using the large sensor and cropping into it, so there will be a lot of noise on the image if it is zoomed past 10 or 20x. Other than that, The cameras are really formidable, but they are not way out of the other competitors' league. Photography on the Ultra is very much still in the same class as the 11 Pro Max and Pixel 4. Overall, the S20 Ultra is a really good phone. Well, it has to be. But is it really worth the £1,200? Well, I think Samsung has made an error in judgment. It is understandable that they want to establish the S lineup as the company's most premium and flagship range, but at the same time, they should have considered the average consumer. No one is going to look at the phone and think, wow, what a good bargain for the specs, because they've really overcharged for a device that is great, but not that great of a smartphone. So, I think you shouldn't buy the S20 Ultra, at least not yet, because the Note 20 Plus will probably come with even better specs and a slightly cheaper cost, because hopefully by then Samsung will have learned their lesson. And also, it is highly likely that the price will probably drastically drop as newer phones come out. Thanks for watching this video, and I will see you all in the next one. Stay tuned.